from the business perspective, it's like super interesting too, just like all the stuff you've been through to get to where you guys are at today. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is wild. It's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to quantify the path from where it started 10 years ago, and I'm sure you feel the same, where you just start out with an idea and all of a sudden you're in a completely different spot when it doesn't seem like that much time has lapsed to get to where you are. But it just comes down to a lot of really talented people. A lot of interest in the products. And,
the right team.
The right team.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's really where it's at.
What year did you design the first pack?
Oh, well, I started in 2010. That's when I started kind of on the path of wanting to have a different platform for my pack. And then it was about 2 years later that I had, well, a year and a half later, that I had a design that I wanted to come to market with, or just wanted to see somebody build. And when I first started it wasn't something that I wanted necessarily to bring to market. I just wanted to see it out there being produced because I thought
someone should do it.
Somebody should do it. It works for me, it has to work for other people. And I had talked to a couple of different companies, but they had their own programs going. And it really just came to the point where either I had to do it, or I could just be another one of those stories where I had this idea once.
Yeah. And so you were working somewhere else at the time, right? You were on the pipeline? Yeah,
I living in Alaska and working on the North Slope in Prudhoe Bay oil field. And I was a high voltage electrician up there, and then that offered quite a bit of time. So you worked a 2-week on, 2-week off schedule, and then you had some vacation mixed in there. So it offered that time to be able to get out on extended hunts in Alaska. And so that was really where it all started.
Did you pick that job for hunting, or did you just kind of fall into it?
I would say I fell into it.
Really?
Yeah. Well, in the very beginning, because when I first moved to Alaska, I moved up there, I was a high school teacher. So I graduated, born and raised here in Montana, then went to MSU, and after I graduated from MSU, Montana State, I moved to Alaska as a teacher. And so I taught for 6 years, and then met Nicole, my wife now, and she wasn't going to continue to live I was living in Homer, Alaska. And so I just kind of got to that point where I thought, well, I'm gonna have to make a career change or figure something out. And so she had been working up on the North Slope during the summers. And I taught welding, and I had been a welder before. And so I applied up there just to get summer work until we figured it out. And I really liked the schedule. So I could go up there and work 6-week hitches and have a couple weeks off here and there, and then take larger chunks of time off during the fall.
Yeah.
And so we just traveled around and worked seasonally. And
no kids at that time?
No kids. Yeah. Not much for responsibilities outside of work.
And you're doing the resident tags at that time, right?
Yep. Yeah, because I had moved up there in '98. Yeah. And so, that was kind of the transition to the slope, and then had welded for the power company that was owned by British Petroleum up there, and they had an opportunity to get into an apprenticeship, and great group of guys, and I enjoyed the work and the freedom, and the pay was good, benefits, and so that was the path that I headed down for the next. I worked for them for 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's where the idea for the Stone Glacier pack first came from, was on those long extended hunts up there?
It was, yeah. It was primarily sheep hunting. So that was, well, sheep and goat, but the sheep hunts were typically a little bit longer in time frame, be anywhere from 8 to 14 days, depending on how you had it set up. And so I was really trying to get my kit as light as possible, just like everybody else out there, and had taken a lot of the things from the ultralight backpacking community.
Yeah.
everything from your sleep system to the tents to the cooking to any of those things that I could take. But the one missing thing, kind of the last part of it, was the backpack. And while there were some hunting backpacks out there, there wasn't anything in that real true lightweight, 4 to 5, even 6 pounds for an expedition style pack. And so that's what I kind of set my sights on, is to whittle that down so you could do an extended hunt and really get to the point where you could travel, getting in there with all your gear, but being able to take one trip coming back out. And so just from my experience, that maximum for me was in that 110, 115 pound range. And you could do that with a dull sheep, even in some technical country, even though you're moving pretty slow.
Get camp and the sheep
Get
out.
camp, sheep, everything, because effectively that ends up doubling your range. And with the given amount of time that you have, because really it's the time that becomes the limiting factor up there. There's only so many days you have a vacation, only so much food you can carry. Weather and trying to do all those factors. So that's where the motivation for the pack started.
Crazy. What were you eating back in those days on those trips?
So I kind of, this is another thing that I had learned a lot through the ultralight community, is I was trying to take all food that did not need to be cooked. So you didn't need to carry a stove, you didn't need to carry fuel, but also stuff that could be rehydrated easily. So there are different types of freeze-drieds, different types of noodle dishes, things that you could rehydrate if you had an hour, hour and a half.
No stove.
And then the other thing, especially in Alaska, and we see it here during the early season too, is that cooking can kind of become a time sink too. So when you get up in the morning, we're used to getting up early enough before light, have something to eat. But up there in August, you might be looking at 20 hours of daylight. So when you roll out of the tent, I wanted to be on the move and doing something. So being able to take things that you didn't need to cook, a lot of different bars, simple stuff.
Has that changed much for you?
Not much. I think that what has changed is here in Montana, I normally always carry a stove now, even though I'll try to keep the fuel minimum. But there was water everywhere up there. And so you didn't have to worry about trying to find ice to melt at high altitude or say late season stuff. We weren't hunting in November except on goat hunts. So you didn't have to worry about taking a stove to make water or the extra fuel. So that's what's changed. In Montana, majority of the time, you kind of need to have one. And then if you have it, you might as well bring at least one hot meal a day.
Yeah.
But I still stick to the plan of only taking different types of hot meals or freeze-drieds that you can rehydrate. So if you're on the move, you're out of fuel, like this last sheep hunt I was on, I punctured a fuel can and I could not get it to seal back up. You just sat there while it dumped.
Yeah.
So there went half of your meals.
Yeah. Damn.
And so just having that little bit of backup, I try to stick to that as well.
Yeah. So you're on these hunts in Alaska and you came up with this concept that you wanted to create a lighter pack with the load shelf so that you could come out with one trip. What was your first step to kind of bring this vision to reality?
Well, the first part was once you had the design, I had to teach myself to sew because and sewing, and that came pretty easy because it's a lot like welding. A lot of it's the machine setup, material prep, making sure you have all your layup correct, and the actual physical running the machine. It's a pretty simple operation. But that was the first step because to be able to make something, test it, tear it apart, make it again, there's just this, there's this knowledge that you gain as you put it together on how it should go together or which seam meets at which spot and where you're going to get your stress points. So that was a good learning process for me, because it just taught me a lot about the design portion, not only the construction portion. And then from there, it was just putting enough time on the pack to make sure that it would actually function the way that you need it to, because unlike a lot of other products, I think most people buy a pack and expect it to pack 100 plus loads for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to duplicate that amount of time and that amount of stress in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And so, and I never did, I can't say that I put 10 years of use in 2 years on a pack, but you try your best.
Do everything you can.
You do everything you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who'd you sell your very first pack to? Do you remember?
I'm sure it was a friend. No, so yeah, when I started in 2012, started selling the first packs in August. And so I'd spent almost a year putting the business together, finding a place in the US that could manufacture them. And then talked to my wife and said, well, here's my plan. I'm just gonna make 60 of them. This is all we'll take out of savings. It's either gonna get legs and it's gonna go on its own, or we'll get our money back out and I'll chalk it up to experience.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And it was all word of mouth at that point. Had a website, but it wasn't really that functional. And it was pretty far down the list at that point. And so, yeah, sold the first 60 packs in about 6 weeks. And of course, I'd had quite a bit of time to try to find 60 customers up until that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was primarily friends and friends of friends, and mostly people within the sheep community or that alpine style hunting community.
Do you think most of those first 60 were sold in Alaska?
I would say it was probably 50-50 in between Alaska and Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I bought my first Stone Glacier. I still have it with the vintage logo on it.
Yeah.
And I think that was like in 2014. But it's pretty awesome to look back and see like how much things have changed since then, and all the new products. There's a lot of new things going on for you.
There are, yeah. It's been keeping us hopping, and I think that's been the fun part of it too. Is getting to learn all of the different products and the design portions, and just to kind of say anything within a hunter's kit isn't off the table right now. Mm-hmm. If we think that we can come to market with something that solves a problem, that is helps and is an improvement over what we're already using, then let's look at it.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can come up with.
Yeah. That's what I've really appreciated about you guys, is like that ability to solve problems. I mean, that's cool, because I think Mountain Tough thinks about stuff a lot of the same way. Like how can we solve a problem, then spend the R&D time solving that problem and then releasing it to the market. But what you guys have done in the last couple of years, like the Gator is a good example of like, there was plenty of Gators on the market, but they had some issues, and just watching you guys go out and solve that problem and bring better options to market is pretty cool, especially when, for a while you were a pack company. Now it's a mountain hunter company, which is a cool transition.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a lot of fun too, because I think it keeps motivation up.
Yeah. To
always be searching, looking at new products, new items, different way of looking at products. Mm-hmm. And it's been fun for me, especially.
Yeah, you get to test all the gear.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the Mountain Tough community and our listeners and our audience is a lot of passionate guys that are passionate about potentially starting their own company someday and chasing their own dreams. Looking back at Stone Glacier, do you have any regrets? No,
I don't. No, I guess I feel fortunate. I've never thought about it that way, but no,
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets. I just feel very lucky that we're all in a spot that we're in,
Yeah.
considering where it started and all the different decisions that could have taken the business a different path. I just feel very lucky that we've ended up where we're at.
Yeah. A lot of big decisions.
There are.
And I'm sure you've been through some challenging times as well that, you know, we don't always see from the outside. Are there any that stick out to you that were just mentally challenging to get through?
Yeah. Well, I think in the beginning, the first 3 years were very challenging because I had continued to work full time on the North Slope and then run Stone Glacier, and the business wasn't. I stuck to the portion I told Nicole where we're not going to put anything more into it. So it had any growth that it had was going to have to come organically off of what you made. And as you well know from a business perspective, without dumping a whole bunch more money into it, relying on that growth, it might only be 10% a year, 15% a year. It was a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
But that's what you have, free capital to keep rolling it. And as the company grows, as the machine grows, it consumes more. So every portion of it you had to keep adding to. So it doesn't allow this super steep growth. And that was the toughest part, is to be able to balance those, be able to balance full-time job that I'm fully invested in, have this on the side, have family, be working away from home.
Yeah.
2 weeks a month. There was just a lot of moving parts, and yeah, there were times where you thought, man, is all this worth it? Is it's consuming all the time, and ultimately, and yes, it is. But I think that it's just a different mindset of how I was going about it, in just the fact that I wasn't looking to change careers, but I had started something because I wanted to see this idea come to market, but then it kind of grew to a spot where I was trying to figure out what to do with it then.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to get rid of it. I really liked my job. I was invested in what we were doing. It was great benefits. And
Tough decision.
Yeah, there were just those balance points.
Yeah.
And the business, especially in the beginning, wasn't large enough for me to just stop what I was doing, jump straight over, and be at that spot. Because in order to run a business like that, you have to have horsepower. You have to have people who are there. You have to have people that are more talented than yourself in spots that you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Everything from the financing to the finding the right people and then making it worth their while. That consumes a big portion of the business. So that was a confusing time to work through.
Yeah. And so you ultimately made the decision to come over full-time into your own company a little bit later on when it was finally ready.
Yeah. And so that's what I did. And then in 2016, partnered with Jeff Sposito.
Yeah.
And he's been our CEO ever since. And that's really when we got our legs. That's when the company started to take off. You have somebody that's invested like you are, that has the knowledge on the business side. I had the knowledge on the product side, and just good teamwork, and then his ability to bring in other good people. Lyle, you just kind of keep going down the line. Colby, Taylor, we just had these people who came in incrementally to really fill those voids that we didn't even know were voids at the time.
Yeah.
And they show up, man, how'd we get along without these people?
Yeah, all stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all great at very specific things.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How has running Stone Glacier been in terms of balancing that with your family and your wife and kids and Nicole? Has it been challenging?
Once I wasn't working out of town 2 weeks every month, it was actually quite easy.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the biggest godsends of being able to be with Stone Glacier, is that I was able to make that transition because I was gone 185, 190 days a year.
Wow.
And that's just a lot of time. That's a lot of contact points you don't have with your family, even if it's short period in the morning making breakfast or at night picking them up. And so being able to transition back to living in Bozeman full time, that's been the biggest impact on my life.
Yeah.
And just my family time.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is, and you kind of wonder how you kept everything afloat once you kind of fall back into that time.
Yeah, that's a long time to be gone.
Yeah, and I know there's lots of people who do it, and lots of people who do it successfully. I just feel like we were at a transition point where it just worked out for our family, and no regrets on the other side. Yeah, so I don't know. Everybody just kind of hits that point in your life where you say, okay, this is our next step. This is what we need to do.
Yeah. Were you still in the oil field when you had your first child?
Yeah.
You were?
And second.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Well, Nicole's a rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that supportive spouse is a game changer. It's amazing how much, like, just having that teammate in your corner, supporting and encouraging you can change the game pretty quickly.
Oh, it does. Yeah, that's a key part of it.
Yeah. And you turned 50 this year?
I did.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah, when Lyle told me that, I was like, I was sure he meant to say 40. I was like, there's no way that Kurt's 50.
It doesn't feel like it. Yeah.
And fitness is still a pretty big component of your life.
Yeah, I think it's maybe more so now than it was in my 20s or 30s. You could just get away with more.
Yeah.
You could get away with more days off and kind of just jump back into things. And as I've gotten older, that's just not the case. Yeah, it has to be, at least for me, it has to become, it's a daily thing.
Yeah.
It's in your schedule.
And what is kind of your fitness regimen these days?
It varies a little bit season by season, but the one thing that stays constant is time in the weight room. And so I try to spend between 35 and 45 minutes every day, and I've very similar programs to yours where it's a series of 8 different exercises rotated through 3 different days. And so you at least give certain muscle groups 2 days off. And then as I work through them, it's a upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. So I'm trying to move from one to the next and
keep
leave.
The heart rate up.
Keep the heart rate up. Try to have less than 20 seconds. Put the dumbbells away, move to the next one. And then just also one of the things as I've gotten older I've found is I don't typically do any exercise where, especially weight bearing, where I can't do at least 12 reps. Because I found as I've gotten older that my muscles will get stronger than my joints, and you just end up with injury.
Yeah.
And then I've gotten a lot more into core type exercises, more body weight type exercises, and higher reps on those. And then also trying to, because I grew up around the weight room in a football situation. My dad was a football coach for 32 years, and just that mentality back then, your pyramid, heavy weights, everything's bench, squat, just these power lifts.
1 rep max.
1 rep, and a lot of that stuff, as you know, is one motion. And so trying to bring in a more full body exercise as well, even instead of just isolating in the shoulders, and just trying to keep the heart rate up as you do that. And I've found, boy, if you can put 35 minutes, 45 minutes down and keep rolling through there and do those 8 exercises, 4 sets of 12 for each one, you're pretty burned at the end of it.
Yeah.
And so that's been my program that I try to stick on a daily.
Yeah, I love that, because I think career longevity is such a big thing for, I think, an outdoorsman, a mountain hunter. Like if someone's hunting the mountains in their 30s. Like we really want them to be hunting well into their 40s and their 50s, and a lot of that is going to come down to functional fitness and also muscle endurance with like that 12 rep range instead of the 1, 2, or 3, but also just making sure they're not getting injuries is one of the most important things, so that they're feeling good in the mountains in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Are you doing cardio as well? Are you putting the pack on and going in the mountains?
Yeah, especially as it starts getting closer to the season. Usually early summer, I'll start to load up a pack and start in the 40-pound range. And I just have one pack at home right now that has 60-pound bag of concrete in it. And then depending on how much time I have, I'll either load it up, if I only have 20 minutes to go, load it up to 100 pounds and just try to get some miles on under it. And it might only be a mile, but I found that helps in just the soreness. Even though I'm exercising and doing that weightlifting, it's such a completely different set of muscles between your traps getting sore and your hips, and just being able to do that a couple, 3 times a week. And then I just pack Nicole really likes to hike. So if we can get a couple of hikes in, she says, we have an hour and a half, we're gonna go try to knock out a couple of miles. I might throw the weight down so I can keep up.
Yeah.
But if I know that I only have 20 minutes before dinner, I'll go down behind the house and just do laps on our property just to get my body under it. And so that helps from that. And I really enjoy trail running too. I'm not really good at it, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so between those two, as the season starts creeping up, I try to keep those, get some miles on both ways.
And do you think you're feeling better in the mountains than you were 10 years ago, or about the same?
I would say that I'm feeling better, feeling more confident. I train more, and I'm more calculated in my training, just knowing as I start to age and as we get older, you know that you have your different tweaks.
Yeah.
A left knee that doesn't do exactly what it did 40 years ago, and it gets sore. So being able to hone in on those different exercises that strengthen, putting more effort into it. But I feel as strong now as I did 10 years ago.
Yeah. And you're back in sheep hunting mode now. You had a big one this year.
Yep.
How did that hunt go?
It went really well. I didn't get a sheep, but it went as well as it could have not getting a sheep. So I went in this year for 10 days, and it was into an area that I've been in before, just kind of stretched it out a little bit farther this time into some new country, and found sheep, found some younger rams, nothing legal, and found some new country that now I can start to head a different direction based off of that, and a lot of it's just learning where animals are frequenting, how to navigate the country. So it was a really good hunt.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And were you doing that all solo?
Yeah, yep, this year was. And typically I have, I do hunt more alone than I do probably with anybody else. Year before last, I was able to go with a good friend, and I like that too. It was nice to sit there and BS and
someone to talk to.
To have somebody to talk to, somebody else on the glass, and so I enjoy both. I just think time frame wise and flexibility, it's easier to just go by yourself at times.
Yeah, I'm interested just in terms of, because I knew you were a big solo hunter, which is amazing in terms of, I love solo hunts for one reason, in terms of like the mental side of being alone, and you learn a lot about yourself. But then there's also great benefits of being with a buddy as well. But like being a dedicated mountain hunter now for you in your 50s, have you found like mental toughness hacks that have really helped you in your life whether that's like staying out there longer or pushing one more ridge further back. Are there any tools that you rely on?
I don't know about specific tools, but I do, as I've gone through, when I go through and I'm looking at an area to hunt, and it might just be my personality, but I like to have a really good plan. Mm-hmm. So I kind of look at it as a game plan, and I'll have it set up where I'm gonna camp each night, where I'm gonna look for water, which direction I'm gonna glass, depending on the sun, where my glassing spots are gonna be, where I'm gonna place my camp, kind of all of those details, because one of the things that I've found that kind of drives me nuts is getting out there and thinking, well, what should I do? Mm-hmm. I wanna stick to my plan, and then once I execute that plan, when I come back out, I know that I've made all the best decisions I could coming up to that, because I spent time to do it, and you don't second guess any of your. So coming back to what you were talking about, when I set that plan up, I really do try to push those limits a little bit, because you're going into a new spot, looking at areas that maybe are tougher to access. How are you going to get in there? How are you going to work through those? So yeah, the mental game becomes a big part of that. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times you might get to something and say, I don't know if I can get up over that.
Yeah.
I found a glacier 2 years ago that should we be going up this?
Yeah.
And the answer was no. At that point, it was just straight risky. Ice, and especially if you can find something else. So I think that's where the mental game plays into it. And as far as the hacks, for me, I get a lot of personal fulfillment from pushing the limits just a little bit more, mm-hmm. and executing on it, and then what used to be your old limits become your norm, or that becomes your comfort zone. So being able to bounce that a little bit each year. But I haven't found any specific hacks outside of you just do it.
Yeah.
And it builds your confidence.
Yeah.
And then you're able to push a little bit more the next time. But it's been a slow process, mm-hmm. because I still remember going on my first mountain hunt solo when I was in Alaska, and it was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And you don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of, and just the mental game of knowing that any decision that you make, you're the one that's going to have to deal with it. You don't have anybody to rely on. So if you make a poor decision, you better have a solution, or that's it.
Yeah.
And so I like that part of it too, because I feel like I move a little bit slower. I feel like I'm living in the moment a little bit more. More focused on every step and what you're doing and what's going on around you, because you don't ever find that you're relying on your buddy walking behind you to spot game, or you're deep in the willows. It's not your buddy that's looking around to see if there's a bear anywhere or paying attention to those things. Just kind of all of those things. I think it just brings a little bit more to the experience.
Yeah, you're fully in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend to people all the time to do like one big trip alone each year for that exact reason, for that like presence, being alone out there, especially in Montana with like grizzly country, always heightens everyone's situational awareness quite a bit. And you'll watch when there's like two guys hunting together, a lot of times you can see it almost every time, where the guy hiking in front is head up looking around, and guy in the back is just head down following that first guy. And so the difference between being alone and sleeping out there at night alone in grizzly country, and all the different things you learn about yourself, and mentally staying out there and not coming home early because you're alone, it's amazing what that can help you with the rest of your life as well.
It does. I think that's one of the big benefits that's hard to quantify, is that it makes other decisions and other things that you deal with in life seem much easier to deal with. Mm-hmm. And just because it pushes your limits a little bit.
Have you started taking your kids into the backcountry quite a bit?
So we do quite a bit of hiking during the summer. So they're 9 and 11. So they're just getting to the point where sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get a bunch of miles down, and then other days you just can't keep up with them. So it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
As far as hunting, yeah, Kate, my daughter is 11, so this is her second year in the apprentice program. And so you see it every year. This year, she could go this year. There's a big difference from last year. So I'm looking forward to in the future. Mm-hmm. She wants to go elk hunting. She wants to be involved in more of those things. She's adventurous. So yeah, they're getting better about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So she's pretty interested into it.
She is, yeah. She got a deer last year, and she got a deer about a week and a half ago. So her stoke level's pretty high right now.
Oh man, yeah. Those apprentice hunts are the coolest thing ever.
They are. I think it gets them much more interested, and it's also at a time too where I feel at 10 and 11 years old, they don't think they know everything. They're at least my kids have been pretty interested in knowing, because it's a bit out of their comfort zone to start.
Yeah.
So they have questions about everything, mm-hmm. which I like.
Yeah. Yeah, I took my daughter Ava this year for her first apprentice year, and it was definitely like one of the most special moments of my life, like certainly a life highlight, just watching her out there. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of new things thrown her way, and then just like the stress and pressure of making that shot when it matters. And it was kind of interesting on the drive home. It was like on the drive there, and my dad came with us too, which was really cool, because there's 3 generations of us in camp hunting together. And it was like on the drive there, she was a kid, and on the drive home, she was like more than a kid. Like mm-hmm. how fast she grew up on that one deer hunt was insane.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is. It's a change. And the other thing that I found, especially with my oldest being a daughter, is that connection between a daughter and a father. It seems a little bit harder to duplicate between her and her mother, just mm-hmm. because they have so much in common. And so us being able to have that common bond together, because Nicole doesn't hunt, so this is Kate, my daughter, and I's thing to go do. Yeah. And for example, for the opener, we went and spent 5 days hunting out of a backpack tent, and there's just a connection there that you can't duplicate in any other portion of your life. Mm-hmm. We see it with our friends. Yeah. Some of our closest friends are the ones that we spent time with in the backcountry. They're just experiences that can't be duplicated. And so that's something that I really want to continue to foster, especially with her. And my son, he's a typical 9-year-old boy. He's going to be ready to go whenever. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's just a different focus for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that one thing that is an issue in the country now is just like men not having enough adventure in their life, and part of the greatness of hunting is like it is a quick way to manufacture adversity, and manufacturing adversity is kind of a new thing for humans to have to look at, where 1,000 years ago, like life was just hard, and so you weren't having to look for harder things to grow as a person. And now where life can get pretty comfortable pretty fast, hunting, and especially mountain hunting, scratches that adversity itch really fast. And I think bringing your kids into that mix, not only does it really bond you as a parent, because like going through adversity, as we've seen with our friends, makes great relationships, and I think it's doing the same thing with our kids, but also just getting your kids out in the elements and having them go through something quite difficult also kind of changes their whole perspective as well and starts shaping them in a little different direction.
It does. Yeah, it really does. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things is just not being comfortable all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You spend a lot of time being uncomfortable if you're hunting and going hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's hard to duplicate that anywhere else.
Yeah, just getting them used to being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? What's big on the horizon for Stone Glacier?
Well, we'll be launching all of our products in January, all of our new year products. So we have a few new apparel pieces coming out, a few new packs, and then I'm always working kind of 1 year in advance. So that's kind of the exciting part for me on my side. And outside of that, nothing totally groundbreaking.
Yep.
But just our new products, trying to fill in certain holes that we've had, some things that we haven't had before, gloves being one of them.
Yeah.
And and a few other insulation pieces, and then as far as our packs, might as well go into those too. Offering a larger long range pack at pretty low weight, an 8700 pack that's going to be right in that 4 pounds 5 ounces range.
Crazy.
Yeah, and then some of the also a pack that's going to hit more of that 3 to 5 day range. That's going to add a little bit more functional organization, access to gear, and I think that one's going to hit home for a lot of the Western hunters.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have added a lot of different SKUs over the last couple of years. It's wild.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a lot to keep track of sometimes.
Yeah, kind of crazy going from just one pack to everything you guys have now.
Yeah, no, that part's been fun.
How have you felt just like being stretched as a leader with all these new employees and a larger team? Has that been challenging for you?
Yeah, there's always, as you well know, you just end up with a limited amount of time out of every day. So a lot of it that I've tried to focus on for myself is becoming more organized, more efficient, better processes, so that you're not having to cut back on portions of the business that you need to maintain, whether it be from a leadership perspective, product perspective, production, all of those things. That's where the biggest change and the biggest challenge has come for me, is just to be more efficient and to be better also about bringing in that talent that we have and delegating, so that you're not feeling like, I'm sure you feel the same way, where when you've started it and you were every part of it in the beginning, you slowly have to start sloughing things off to people who you hired to do those things.
Yeah.
And turn it away. And so, being more aware of that, that's been the biggest change for me.
Yeah, delegation is tricky. Is your favorite part of the job, like the moment that fills your cup, is that being in the design room, just dreaming up new products that solve problems?
It is, yeah. I think in the way that it has normally worked for me is it'll be random stuff. Be driving to work in the morning and something will pop into your head, or a lot of it comes from just using the gear and being out and thinking, man, there has to be a better way for this to function than this. And then take those notes and be able to slate that time. It makes you excited to go in and say, I need to figure this out. I think I have an idea, but I need to put it together to see what it looks like. So yeah, that's the enjoyable part for me. I mean, it's all enjoyable, but that's the most enjoyable part.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important to recognize as well, though, just so that you're making sure you have those moments, because I think if you removed all that off your plate, your cup could become empty quite quickly, working on things that aren't satisfying you.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's the other big part, especially when you start to bring other people in, is making sure that everybody else feels that way too. Mm-hmm. That there are parts in their daily, weekly skill set that are filling their cup, and they're excited to come to work.
Yeah.
So that's been another part of the learning process, I think, for all of us.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. It's cool to see how far you guys have come. It's pretty amazing to watch that journey.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. And appreciate you swinging by today. I think the Mountain Tough audience will be super interested in your kind of your fitness regimen and what's kept you crushing it all these years. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. Appreciate it.
All right, you bet.